Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5. This is Ahmed. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. A lot of just chaos happening since Trump has been coming to office. We're going to be speaking on the program about some of Trump's executive orders, deportations, and even deporting people students who have spoken out about the genocide in Gaza and for Palestinian rights. There's also a horrible crash that's happened in D.C. overnight or last night. Our prayers are with those that lost their lives, and we'll be speaking about more about what's happening in the Middle East. Samar and I will be live doing that and maybe taking some of your phone calls. This is True Talk on WMNF. We'll be right back after this short music break. Well, for some reason, music is not ready. So, actually, I'll just continue with my program. So, Donald Trump has issued a bunch of executive orders that are happening, and a lot of them are impacting. One of them was, this freeze on federal aid that's impacting people in the U.S., but it's also impacted people abroad because the United States is one of the biggest funders of international aid programs through the USAID or USAID programs. I heard of stories of people that are on scholarships in other parts of the world that were impacted, that suddenly, like for example in Egypt, where USAID provides a lot of funding for programs there, including scholarships for students in rural areas to attend the American University in Cairo. Of course, these have other agendas, for example, to push American, not propaganda, but to make people in those parts of the world to be more in favor or of American culture or society. Well, those students, all their scholarships were frozen, and they had to be kicked out of school, or their studies were suspended until further notice. Some of them that live on campus, for example, or in dormitories, and may have only a few classes left or a term left, suddenly their degrees are in jeopardy. Samar is now joining me, and we'll talk about some of those executive orders, specifically the order that Trump is promising to deport students who have participated in encampments last spring and fall last semester, and ones that are still doing so to protest the Israeli genocide in Gaza. What does that mean for our freedom of education and the right to, college campuses have been historically a place where you exchange ideas and protests happen and people object. And, we've talked about this on the show before, and some of those students were actually kicked out of classes, but now Trump is going a step further and saying that he wants to actually deport international students who participated in that. So, Samar, welcome back to the show.
How are you, my co-host Ahmed? Hope you're doing well.
I am, thank you.
You know that I lived in many Arab countries. I was born in Kuwait, went to school there, and I also went to school in Lebanon but it was like a short, maybe 6 months. And then I went to school in Saudi Arabia, and then school also in Egypt. But then I went to college to the American University in Cairo. And all my education was in Arabic. And the only good, really, level of English was in Kuwait when we were young. So anyways, I had to do 6 months of intensive English language, or 1 semester, 4 months of intensive English language. But when we started taking classes, my mind, my brain, my being, my whole entire intellect was not used to being asked a question and asked about an opinion. Like I remember most of
What
our
do you mean? Where were you being asked about an
in
opinion?
American University in Cairo when I started taking the courses,
Okay.
history or political science or mass comm, and all of a sudden in a classroom setting, the professor is asking for my opinion,
So before you
and
were
this has
not
never
being,
happened.
yeah.
If you just let me finish my trend of thought and be patient, you will understand why the heck I'm talking about this.
Yeah, it's just taking a long time to get to the point. So I was trying to clarify.
Because,
If I'm not
like,
understanding, then maybe the listeners also. So, but go ahead.
no, because they need this background
Right.
to understand the gravity and the disastrous policies that this guy just enacted.
Okay. Let's tie it
So
together.
you have millions of people out there who go through education and never go through this system of freedom of speech in a university setting. Because we just memorize, 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 memorize. I can tell you now, okay, a lesson that I have memorized in history book about Al-Khulafa al-Rashidin, the righteous leaders that came to rule the Muslim community after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I mean, that is the level of memorization. But to think, to analyze, to have an analytical mind, I learned all that when I went to the American University in Cairo.
So you're saying that education in the Middle East doesn't have critical thinking, that only you were enlightened once you went to the AUC, so the classes in the schools in the Arab world don't teach this type of critical thought. They just memorize. Is that the point you're making?
Exactly. So everybody looked up for the American system of education because it's, first of all, based on semesters.
Okay.
So you don't have to study one subject for 1 year. And you take, and there is the concept of electives. So you go out of your specialty. Let's say you want to study medicine or you want to study engineering or history, but you can end up taking a class on logic or a class on mass communication or. So everybody used to brag about this particular aspect of American higher education, of course. So when you go to college, even here in the US, when you go to college, you have more freedom to explore new subjects, new ideas. And obviously, it is threatening to Zionism. And obviously, some people just don't care about the meaning of these policies to the image of the US globally. For instance, Ahmed, as soon as I put this tweet about this executive order, most of people said America is a big lie. Every day we see that America is a big lie. So, I don't want to keep defending and being on the defense. And I say, look, there will always be people who will fight these policies, who will try to change it once this administration is gone. But at the same time, how can you penalize people for their opinion? And this idea of equating being pro-Palestine with pro-Hamas is stupid. Excuse my
Who's pushing? Yeah. Well, first I want to just comment about your issue as far as comparing the education system in America compared to what's happening in the Middle East. I looked up online. It says the U.S. ranks 36th in the world, 36 and 125th in global literacy rankings. Adult literacy, over 130 million U.S. adults read below 6th grade level. So, I mean, America is not known for the greatest education system, but maybe you're specifically talking about higher education or
Ahmed,
colleges, right?
the idea, okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, one time I was in the classroom, okay, and I am in Egypt. I'm a Palestinian, okay, Sadat has just signed the peace process, and the whole Arab world was against him. So in the Arabic system, you have an inspector that comes from the Ministry of Education to see if the teacher and the school is up to par with the education guidelines. So she walks into the school, and my professor and the headmaster and the whole administration is in this classroom. This lady walks and she says, "Is there any Palestinian in the classroom?" Of course, there were two or three, but I'm the only one who volunteered and stood up. And she said, "And what do you think of what Sadat did?" I said, "People in Palestinians think he's a traitor. I swear to God, if you saw my teacher, it was an English period. He almost died. And the headmaster and everybody and the lady looked at me and she said, 'You're very brave.' I said, 'You asked me a question and I answered it.' And she said, 'Okay, thank you. Please don't punish her.' She told the administration not to punish me. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being proficient in English or grammar or math or physics.
Okay, well, that's why I asked you. I wanted to just to clarify.
I mean, I can't go now to Egypt or Jordan or any other Arab country and speak freely.
Yeah, okay.
Speak my mind.
Right. I mean, that's why I want to clarify, because freedom of expression, yes, of course, in America it's way different and about your opinions. But critical thinking, people have critical thinking in the Middle East, right? Being able to compare, but not able to necessarily express freely because of the dictatorship regimes there that, silence. But it's like you're saying, it's starting to happen here, is basically what you're saying. They're trying to silence people, specifically when it comes to Palestine and Israel. Do you notice that, when they're talking about the makeover of Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, Facebook, they now will remove the moderators and the people that censor speech on there. But the one, for example, when it comes to gender issues and LGBTQ issues, abortion, etc. However, when it comes to Israel and the genocide and the occupation, that's still being censored. And the same thing on X, right?
Yes, Ahmed.
So in America, there is freedom of expression about many issues, but when it comes to that specific issue, everyone seems to be silenced, including on X, where you can, there's anything is allowed to be said, and Elon Musk champions this idea that, there's freedom of speech on X. However, the one issue you can't criticize is Israel.
I think... in a way, it's a very positive sign things are changing. The more you go towards censorship, the more it means that there is some kind of a truth that is coming out finally, and that people are paying attention to the truth of what is going on for more than 75 years in Palestine, with the creation of this state, Israel, from Europeans who have nothing to do with the land, except, of course, for being Jewish. And this is why, for instance, if you go and check the names, the original name of Netanyahu, and you will find that they are all mainly Eastern European names that they had to change to make themselves look like they belong to this land. So the more you try to criminalize talking about Palestine, the more I see it as a sign of fear that the truth is coming out. So now we really need to stifle dissent. We need to clamp down on freedom of speech. But what scares me, Ahmed, because I'm also not only I wear the hat of being Palestinian, but also I'm a Muslim Arab American, it will lead to other issues. It will lead to other discussions. And that's where I think some people are worried. Okay, today it's really Palestine, but maybe tomorrow it is also Islam, or maybe it is other social issues that are purely American. So it scares me. The idea of censorship scares me because I am somebody who lived under censorship most of my young life, let's say. Like I lived most of my life now in America. So I'm so used to it. It's very difficult to keep quiet.
Right. I mean, this
When you
show may
travel.
not be allowed if we have to be quiet, WMNF, and expressing
Yeah.
free speech. But this is known as a bedrock of the American Constitution. This is what it means to be American: a religious freedom of religion and expression, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. All of those things seem to be more under attack now than ever. And it seems like the press is just not really challenging what's going on. There's so many executive orders that are coming out, and people are accepting it. And now the press has really become these tech oligarchs, these tech billionaires who have all lined up. We saw them at the inauguration lineup behind the president. These are people who opposed the president at one point in his first term. Now they're just all getting behind him as far as championing whatever, American greatness and trying to usher in the economy. Are they putting their so-called principles aside in exchange for profit, or they just didn't have any principles and it's always about them? Do you
I
think?
really don't know, Ahmed, if you're asking me.
Yeah, I'm asking you your
They
opinion. I
know
mean, this is
well,
your time to express your opinion before they take it away.
yeah, I think they. I mean, Musk was learned a lesson when he said something quite anti-Semitic, and the ADL and many. He was punished, let's say, penalized financially by several companies.
Yeah, they
Withdrawing.
boycotted his platform from
Yeah,
advertising and they hurt him.
which to me, I still believe that he is a racist.
Well, we saw that he did this Nazi salute, and now you see the ADL came out and defended him.
Which is really, it just shows you there are people who really just love power and whoever in power. But to me, I sincerely believe that he is a racist human being. From the things, forget about like Arabs or Muslims, the way he speaks about keeping Italy Italian.
And
So, okay,
Germany.
let's stop all eateries and Olive Garden from being in America. Why do we have so many pizza places here and we have so many Italian restaurants? Let's keep America apple pie and steak and potatoes.
Is there what would be left if of the American food if you get rid of all this international food? And I don't know if people would agree that Olive Garden is actually Italian food. Some people would be, but that's. But I get your point. We actually have a phone call. Somebody wants to talk about education. I don't know. Do you want to take the phone call?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Yes, William from Sarasota. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, my wonderful guest there who is speaking.
That's my co-host, Samar.
Could you repeat, please?
That's not a guest. That's my co-host, Samar.
Okay, your co-host.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I do apologize because I thought it was an invited individual speaking on.
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead, William.
Issues. What I find very clear in full clarification of what she's speaking of is that in the initial education is like me learning about Tom Sawyer or Little Red Riding Hood. It's routine to say you have an idea of what the language is saying. But if you are to look at that initial thought as being critical towards it, saying, well, what's Red Riding Hood doing in the woods, and not being accompanied by someone through the woods so that she can have a way to be safely going to the woods, Mm-hmm. In other words, there is an exemption of critical thinking on that level. You just routinely it's like taking something that you want to save and packing it as a fire. the simulation to that is like getting rid of trash. You pack it in, but there's no this distinction between these two. A file is equal to that of, let's say, a container that contains something. It can be trash.
Okay, so what is your point?
Well, what I'm saying is that she clearly opens up the idea that critical thinking was not being open in the initial form of, say, being able to say, teach me your language and teach me your way of life, of democracy and all the other factors that are well involved. And then when you come into a place where you say, well, I come here because I come here for better, because I have experienced what it is like in certain environments. And not saying that my home is the worst, because everybody wants to improve. Everybody wants to go back and say, I've got something to offer. Then we find that we come here now, and then we find that we are being put into a situation where, well, where's your opinion? Can you divulge anything better? And then when you clarify something, they throw back and say, well, what about when you were like back there where you come from?
Mm-hmm.
How is the worst can be? How much more can we go from improving to criticizing to the worst, when you actually should elevate the idea that the improvement has been gained? You now
yes. Okay, thank you, William, for that comment. He makes a good point that reinforcing basically what you're saying, Samar. But right now, a lot of these issues, a lot of these things are seem to be under threat. I mean, basically, the American form of government, so many things are happening so quickly, and you realize that our system of government is not really foolproof. A lot of it is just kind of normative stuff. They say like there's checks and balances, but the president has a lot of power. They can do many things through these executive orders, and Trump seems to be testing that. How far can he go? And of course, for example, he issued a executive order. What was the executive order that now I'm slipping my mind? But the next day, the different states had sued, and now it's been halted. So there is still a judicial system in place. However, the president issuing so many, in order to actually implement or hold him accountable, you have to sue, and then you have to find a judge that is willing to stand up to the executive. And then what happens if he doesn't? And this whole issue of pardoning, I mean, did you see the pardons that Biden did on his last day of office, pardoning people in his family that haven't even been accused of a crime? Can you actually pardon somebody in advance before they're charged with a crime?
I have no idea. I do not have any legal background, but actually, something quite interesting happened to talk, Ahmed, about censorship in colleges. Columbia University offered an apology because there was a sentence in an astrology class, I think the syllabus, where it said it's something about the sky. And it said something about the sky in Gaza before bombing or before destroying it.
Okay.
And it warranted an apology. It warranted to change the syllabus. I mean, the level of censorship is becoming really incredible.
It's becoming scary.
Thank God I don't teach anymore, because imagine I go to the classroom and I have to have a lawyer next to me.
Well, you didn't used to have to do that. You can say what you want in class. Well, in fact, you can still say what you want. It's just the one issue that you can't talk about or criticize is Israel in our country. What?
And say the worst things about the president.
Correct.
The Republicans, Democrats, Biden. I can say anything I want about God, about my husband, about anybody. Not when it comes to Israel. You will have people reporting you. So they had to apologize and remove the syllabus of astronomy or astrology, or I mean they're studying the skies. It's like when one of the most shocking things that I noticed, Ahmed, when we had the last hurricane Ian 2 years ago, is that when there was no electricity and I went outside, I was shocked at the number of stars.
Okay.
I mean, look at tonight, go outside in Tampa,
Yeah.
look up into the sky, you might see one.
Just the brightest ones, yeah.
And then when there was no electricity in the whole neighborhood and the whole town, actually, it is shocking, Ahmed, how the sky looks. So probably the guy who was doing this syllabus was showing how, before and after, before the war and after the war.
Yeah, well, they don't want to recognize. They don't want people to know that this war is going on. This genocide is happening. All you have to do is look at the images, like you were saying, the before and after satellite images that Google has now finally updated, and it's like it looks like the end of the world. It looks like a sci-fi movie, one of those movies that destruction everywhere, rubble everywhere, end of times. Like a meteor just landed from space and destroyed this area. But this is 80%. All done. Yeah. What did you say?
80%. The calculation now with people looking at the maps calculated that 80%. So neither World War I or World War II or Nagasaki and Hiroshima combined created this level of destruction in one geographic area.
And the world is just watching, idle, watching it happen. And the one fascinating image is that we saw that once the ceasefire was announced, that's in place, that these Palestinians in Gaza, who have been displaced for months now, rushing and running, walking, taking whatever way they can get back to their homes, where they were pushed out and driven out from, knowing that they're going to go back and find rubble. Of course, many of them were devastated. They didn't realize how bad things are, but they're going back. They, normally, like, for example, in other areas where there's war, whether it's Ukraine or other places, people left their nation. They got on, trains and whatever, and they relocated all over. However, in Gaza, they couldn't do that because all the borders are closed. They're surrounded by walls, and they cannot leave. I mean, if you don't believe me, look it up. They're surrounded by walls that are like more than 20 feet high. It's like a big open-air prison that surrounds the whole Gaza Strip. But even if they had the opportunity to leave, even if the borders were open, because the Israelis want them to leave and to be pushed into Egypt and Jordan and others to take them, they would not have left. When you ask them why, they say because they learned from 1948. And in 1948, there was this huge catastrophe. In Arabic, it's called the Nakba, where more than 750,000 Palestinians were driven out of their ancestral homes, their ancient their homes that they've been in for generations, for centuries, promising, and they're promised, you'll come back when things settle down, and they were never able to return, and they became stateless. So people don't want to do that again, and they learned the lesson from there. And your family is one of those that was impacted like that.
Yes, Ahmed, my family, my mother, my father, my husband, we were terribly impacted. I mean, I have the privilege of being able to visit, but for my sister and my mom and, other people in my extended family, my cousins, my uncles, who do not have foreign citizenships, they cannot go and see my grandfather's citrus land.
Which is where?
In Lid.
Lid is inside the borders of what is now Israel?
Yeah, it's where Ben Gurion Airport is, and that's where part of my grandfather's grape grows.
And they cannot go back yet. Somebody who claims to be Jewish from Russia, whether they're telling the truth or not, as soon as they land in Israel, they're automatically given Israeli citizenship. They're giving all these benefits. They're even given a home. That belonged at one point to Palestinians. And yet Palestinians that are displaced all over the world have no right to ever visit their home country or their land unless maybe if they have dual citizenship or they have some sort of citizenship like the United States or European country. Samar, I have a caller named V that's calling in from Lakeland. I'm going to take her. But if you want to join the conversation, you can call us at 813-239-9663. We're talking about the suppression of speech when it comes to Israel, attack on Gaza and occupation and the genocide that's happening there. It seems to be that they want to silence everyone that dares speak out about this and right away label them anti-Semitic and it's not allowed to be spoken of. And there are all these rules that are popping up everywhere across this country to silence people. V from Lakeland, go ahead. You're on True Talk.
Yes, thank you. I
You're
want
welcome.
to call your attention to the picture of the little girl running down the road, burning with napalm, who had all her clothes off in the Vietnam War, and how that one picture turned the sentiment of the American public against the Vietnam War and eventually ended that war. That one picture told everything. Children were being killed. And I believe the suppression, the American government learned from that. And so they suppress any pictures of children being killed or women being killed or elderly people being killed in Gaza. And they paint this little picture that, Israel's doing some bombing to clean up Hamas. And the fact is that Israel is trying to get rid of all the Palestinians in Gaza to keep the oil, and the oil company money is behind them, which is why the American government is behind them. A lot of us know this. But if somehow hackers could get into any media system, universities, colleges, schools, anywhere, and send pictures of the victims of the Israelis, I believe that would begin to turn the tide towards the rest of the world saying, hey, this is horrible, this is inhumane, this is genocide, and it has to stop. But they keep whitewashing it, they keep throwing up smoke screens of this issue and that issue and so forth to keep the American public from ever focusing on what is really happening in Gaza. And the fact that the Americans who turned away the ships of Israelis who were trying to get away from the Germans in World War II, and the British did the same, and sent them to Palestine because they didn't want them here, I think that the irony of that repression and desertion of people who were in desperate need to save their lives is now happening to the people of Palestine. And they are suppressing any pictures. That's what we need. We need pictures. We need for someone in Palestine to start hacking different accounts and sending pictures of the victims of Palestine, sending them pictures of entire communities in rubble, and letting them know just how devastating and how horrible this is for the Palestinian people. I believe if they could do that on a just nonstop basis every day, bombarding us with those pictures, the American public would turn around and say, that's enough. Stop it. Get out of there. Stop funding that war.
You make a good point. Thank you, V. Samar, she makes a good point. I mean, pictures are very powerful. These videos, yeah, it is happening. We do see it in live stream, but the American media is not portraying and is not carrying those images. I mean, even case in point is the popular Sunday show 60 Minutes. It seems like they sat on a lot of investigative journalism that shows that the Israeli military was using 2,000-pound bombs on housing units apartment buildings that killed civilians. Yet they waited until the ceasefire was about to happen, and then they aired that footage, which it seems like they've had that information, for the past 6 to 7 months.
True, Ahmed. And if you look at the New York Times and the mainstream media and even BBC in Europe or in England, you will find that they use acrobatic language in order not to mention the word genocide or not to mention who killed. So let me read for you this headline. He survived 15 months of war in Gaza, then died as ceasefire neared. So when you read this, you'd think, oh my gosh, the guy had cancer and died. Or, oh my God, he had a heart attack. Or he fell from his balcony on his head. No, if you go dig deep, you will find that, oh, Israel just sniped him. Like yesterday, there was this 12 years old standing in front of his parents' building. And then, boom, a bullet into his belly. And he fell. Screaming and screaming and screaming. A guy on Twitter tells me, well, you teach your kids to hate. So I said, we have no clue who is this kid. We don't know anything about him, except that he looks like a 12 years old screaming his lungs out because he was shot while standing in front of his parents' house in Jenin in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank. So you will have always people, Ahmed, that will justify the murder of kids. But like V said, of course, if there aren't enough Americans really paying attention to what is going on, they would not be censoring what's happening. But there is also the story when Trump said that they're trying to stop waste in government, which is something great. So he's stopping a shipment of 50, or he found out that there was a shipment of $50 million going to Gaza of condoms. And, I do follow the news a lot, especially on Twitter, and I'm thinking, what?
When did this happen?
If there is something wrong with Gaza, is that people have too many kids and do not think of protection. To the level, Ahmed, to be very frank here, when, maybe 6 years ago, with the latest war, not the latest, the one before, I think 2014 or something. So I was in Egypt, and my sister was involved with helping Palestinians who come out of Gaza to get treatment. So this guy's wife, second wife, has been injured. So I'm chatting with the guy and I'm saying, so how many kids you have? And he told me 6. I said, oh my gosh, 6? And you have 2 wives? He said, yeah. I said, and he has no money. Okay. He's like beyond broke. I said, you are beyond broke. How could you get married to another wife? And he said, because the first one, my cousin, and it was kind of no love involved, and I fell in love and I married the second one. And I said, and why do you have 6 kids? He looked at me, Ahmed, and looked and was very, very quiet. And he said, can I be frank with you as a woman? And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know, where is this conversation going? And he says, being intimate with my wife is the only decision that I make that Israel is not involved with. My food, my life, my death, my travel, my movement, everything is under the control of Israel. He said, only when I am intimate with my wife, Israel is not involved.
Wow.
So when I heard this news coming from Trump, I knew this can't be true.
Yeah, so you're saying that he was saying it's an act of defiance that he was doing, basically. It's not just...
Exactly.
It's because this is the only thing that we have freedom to do and they can control. And when you're saying they control the food, there's actually reports that they control the the calories, how much food enters in the Gaza Strip, how much water enters, how much electricity. So, yeah, I see your point. And so what about this $50 million for condoms to the Gaza Strip that Trump claimed last night?
The U.S. aid did like an investigation to figure out what is going on. Of course, they said this does not exist. Some of it, part of the aid, they send it to, and this is part of U.S. aid in general, to third world countries, believe it or not. It includes condom. So they specified that it went to some Arab countries, but there is an area in Mozambique, in Africa, called Gaza. And that's where mainly went. And it went there not because the U.S. wants to control population, but because of AIDS. And
the AP News basically reporting today, 15 hours ago, no evidence that $50 million was designated by the U.S. to buy condoms for Hamas. I actually calculated, like I just did a quick calculation, how much does $50 million buy in condoms? How many condoms is that? And guess the number, Samar. How many condoms would that be?
I really have zero knowledge.
It's like depending on how much it is and what, like the brand, but usually NGO pricing for condoms would be like 2 cents. So it's about it's anywhere between 1 billion to 2.5 billion condoms. And if you divide that by males above the age of 15 in Gaza, it would be something like 1,500 condoms per person, for each person in the Gaza Strip. Like, it's not happening. So obviously it's not happening. And the AP News is reporting that, during a signing ceremony yesterday, President Donald Trump claimed that his administration had identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. Turns out to be a huge lie. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, made a similar claim Tuesday during her debut press briefing, stating that the Department of Government Efficiency and found this. This is the office that Elon Musk is heading. Found that there was a $50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. And they went down through it that the only Arab nation that got any, and it was a small amount, was Jordan. No other Arab country received any condoms part of this U.S. aid. And maybe this is just the U.S. Government trying to restrict some of those African countries and from having more children, I guess, or, to control populations, or because they're having, just family planning, they call it. But it has nothing to do with the Gaza Strip. And I don't think that's there. What they need is water. So if you go send, and then he actually went further. Is it true? Because I only heard a clip of it. I don't know if it's true or not. But the clip that I saw showed Trump saying this, and I couldn't believe it because he said, "Well, Hamas took it and made bombs out of them." What did they like? Was it like water balloon bombs or what? Like, how are you going to make a bomb out of a condom?
I think what happened is that during the Great March, where Palestinians would go to the
fence, the wall,
and the walls with the Israel, and they would do balloons with some of the. I think with the condoms that were available, just to make fun and taunt the soldiers who were shooting at them. But, what is sad, Ahmed, is that these things, the media would highlight it. I mean, that's the White House, for God's sake, the press secretary of the White House. And this is the president of the
it's
US.
Just so disturbing.
So do you think Fox News went back to read the U.S. aid report? And say, oh, by the way, this was false? No. And some people this is going to be in their, stamped in their brain and
right.
In their...
Just like they made the claim that all these rapes happened on October 7th that turned out to be false. And until now, in Congress, in the government, on TV, they keep repeating. And the whole thing about beheaded babies, 40 beheaded babies, they continue to, repeat these lies, even though they've been debunked over and over. And in fact, the main prosecutor in Israel has already admitted that there are no rape cases out of the October 7th attack because not a single they haven't identified a single victim of rape. So if this mass rape supposedly happened, they couldn't identify a single victim. But yet, people in the media continue to repeat the lie. People in government continue to repeat the lie. It's called atrocity propaganda. Samar, I have some people on the phone. Our phone number is 813-239-9663. I'm going to go through them in order. Let's see if this person, what they have to say. Simon in Lakeland.
Ahmed, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Been a long time since I've called in, and you've been willing to take my call. This is the question. I'm not going to get into specifics, but if you look at how Israel's fighting the war, do you think Israel, the IDF, should fight wars, this particular war, the way Arab and Muslims fight each other in wars, like the Hama massacre, the Damor massacre, Black September, the way Saudi Arabia fought Yemen, the way Iran fought Iraq?
I don't understand your question. What is your question? Should they fight the same way or should they fight different?
Should Israel fight wars the way Arab and Muslims fight each other?
It would probably be better since when they fight each other, both sides have weapons. On this situation, one side has all the weapons and the other does not have any weapons. I don't understand your point. What's happening in Gaza is not a war. Everybody knows that it is just a genocide. Like if one side has just planes, F-16s, the most sophisticated weapons, and they're bombing nonstop. The other side just has rifles. Where's the war? So I would not call this necessarily a war, and it's not just me. Human Rights and Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, every single organization, human rights organization in the world has already identified this as a genocide. The ICJ has said that it's a genocide, plausible. ICC has ordered arrest warrants for war crimes against Netanyahu and Gallant. These are the international institutions. Everybody is saying it's a genocide. The only ones that aren't is basically Israel and the United States and Germany and some of their other allies that keep pushing this notion. But I think it's already, the whole world knows it's a genocide. But thanks for calling in, Simon. I hope you can call in the future. John from Lutz.
Yes, hello, Samar and Ahmed. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
On the discussion about how the whole conflict is being suppressed, and any discussion about genocide, some people are trying to call anti-Semitic. You had Russ Miller on and how he's facing that in the Democratic Party. Well, he's continuing to face that, even though he survived another attempt to try to throw him out of the Democratic Party simply for criticizing genocide. It continues, and I have a proposal for you. I wonder if the station could sponsor an airing, a showing of the movie, something like Israelism.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I saw that film, and I think more people need to see it. The powerful thing about it is this film is made by Israelis. It's made by Jewish people, young Jews, who actually were fully behind and supportive of the Israeli state and the occupation, and then they learned about what's really happening, and then they started becoming anti-Israeli government, and they want to have pro-peace and coexistence, and of course they try to depict them as self-hating Jews. But yeah, I think that would be a great film that we can recommend.
Yeah, Yeah, Breaking the Silence is the group, and have a panel discussion and invite the president of the Democratic Jewish Caucus here in Hillsborough County to be on the panel and try to...
Who is that person? I'm not familiar with that. Why him specifically?
Because he's very strongly going after trying to throw Russ Miller out of the Democratic Party and call him anti-Semitic for criticizing genocide.
You mean, we had Russ Miller on our show before, but you're saying basically this figure is targeting people within the Democratic Party to silence them for speaking out about Israel's actions in Gaza.
Absolutely, and the state chair, Nikki Fried.
Oh, maybe Nikki Fried can come to the... Yeah, well, I don't know if they'll agree, but it's a good idea. Thanks, John. Stephen in St. Petersburg, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing today?
Hey, great, you're live.
Oh, okay. As a Jewish person myself, and I believe the Holy Scriptures, and when you read in the book of Exodus, Deuteronomy, the book of Joshua, Leviticus, and so on, the land of Canaan, which is Israel today, is promised the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, the geographical dimensions in detail of the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is and includes Gaza, the so-called West Bank, the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, part of Western Jordan, all of Lebanon, and most of Syria. Now, that's what the Bible teaches. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
and what's your point?
Well, either the Bible is true or it's not.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Well, let me ask you this.
No, I because you said something. I want to clarify something. Now, who is that covenant that God promised that to? Did he promise it to Netanyahu, or who did he promise it to in the Bible?
He promised to Abraham.
Okay, now stop it there, please. Just 1 second. Abraham had 2 children, Isaac and Ishmael. Let me just finish my point.
You're not going to...
So this is a thing that Zionists always skew and mess up, to try to say that this is promised only for the Jews.
I thought we have separation of state and church, and they make fun of us Muslims in the Arab world because we do not.
Yeah, but even let's go by his his point that God promised this in the Bible, and let's say the Bible is true. And he says, I promise to you and your offspring this land. God, in the Bible, he made that with Abraham. Now, that would include the Muslims and the Arabs. Why? Because God's first son, before Isaac, was actually Ishmael, who he had with Hagar. If you don't know that, read your Bible, read your history. Prophet Abraham, he's known as the father of the prophet, because he wasn't only the father for Isaac and Jacob and the other descendants, the tribes of Israel. He's also the father before all of that. He was already the father of Ishmael, and he migrated him to what is now Mecca in the Holy Land there. And the offspring from Ishmael came Muhammad and the Muslims. So so even by that point, that land is promised to both the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. You can't just monopolize it. And it was not called Israel back then. There was a guy named Israel. His name was Jacob, and they renamed that area called Israel. Israel was basically the father of the 12 tribes, and his name was Jacob, and he had 12 children, and each of them had a tribe. And those are the 12 children. That's why I called them the children of Israel. So they're acknowledged in the Quran as well and in the Bible, but that land is for all those people, not just the Zionist secular Jews that are trying to eliminate everybody off the land and keep the land to themselves. That would be against the Bible. That's against Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So, Samar, we're out of time. I like that you guys call in, but you got to also give us a chance to respond. You're not just going to come in here and not be challenged with your ideas. This has been WMNF Tampa. We're going to have the scoop on next. Samar, do you have any final thoughts in the next 30 seconds?
No, Ahmed, but I like your answer, actually, I have to say.
It's promised to all of us, so you have to share the land if you want to, but
They live.
And the people that are now taking over, like you said, all of them have these Polish and Russian and Ukrainian last names, and they came to that land, which was already, and removed the indigenous people. That's what happened.
Which is Eastern, and they keep saying we're European values. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. We're going to have the scoop on next. Have a great weekend, everyone. This has been True Talk on WMNF. We can continue the conversation next Thursday at the same time at 12 o'clock. Take care.